全校禁止眼霜。我的眼霜新发现。
I see you're headed into town. What do you do first?
Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hotline, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. It was looking like the last 2 years the Durham investigation was really going to be a nothing burger. And not because there was no there was no actual substance to the investigation, but we just didn't know, could we trust John Durham? Were they going to be able to actually find any credible evidence? Were people going to flip and give testimony? Was the FBI and the CIA going to continue acting in the corrupt manner that they have and impede the investigation? And so for the most part, I would say I was a little bit pessimistic. I wasn't exactly sure that John Durham was going to get to the bottom of anything. And then the last couple of weeks have completely shifted over my thought process. It's no longer a debate. The whole Russia hoax is now directly connected to Hillary Clinton's campaign. There's now an investigation directly into her law firm, and Kash Patel, who's been on top of all of this, Donald Trump's former Defense Department Chief of Staff, is now predicting something crazy. His claim is that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, or as Donald Trump likes to refer to them, the lovers, are potentially working with John Durham. Folks, if this is true, and all these deep state operatives who work to unseat a duly elected president start to sing like canaries, bringing, as Kash Patel says, the big fish down. Let me show you guys his prediction. Let's get into some of the details. Of course, once again, Catherine Herridge coming with some incredible investigative reporting. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so this is a huge prediction. Kash Patel, Peter Strzok, and Lisa Page are cooperating with John Durham.
Kash, I want to know from you when you believe the FBI figured out that the lies were coming from the Clinton campaign. I know that in January 25th, 6th, and 7th, the FBI did meetings with the subsource on what exactly was in the dossier, and at that time they told them that it was garbage and they made it up. They had beers and embellished. But when do you believe the FBI figured out that all of this was just one political campaign trying to take down another?
I think they knew right away, and the documents that we put out in the Nunes investigation, the Nunes memo, and the HIPSI report on Russian active measures show that the FBI knew right away, because their FISA abuse process, now that declassification process is complete, and your viewers can read it, that the FBI knew the information was fraudulent, they knew the credibility problems with Christopher Steele, and they knew the DNC through Fusion GPS and Perkins Coie were piping in tens of millions of dollars into the machine so that they could get up a FISA warrant on President Trump. So I think they knew right away, which is why I think the individuals at the head of the FBI need to be held accountable.
Wow. So they knew that it was garbage, and yet they still pursued a FISA warrant to wiretap Trump organization members like Carter Page. Will John Durham reel in any big fish, in your view?
Yeah, and I believe so. And let me just put this in perspective. When I was running large-scale conspiracy and fraud investigations, they took me 3, 4, 5 years to prosecute. John Durham's only in his second year of the most political scandal in U.S. history. So I believe within the next 6 months, look out for indictments against the folks like Fusion GPS and Glenn Simpson for helping perpetuate this fraud. And look out for individuals like Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. I believe they're already helping John Durham. They're cooperating with him to get the bigger fish like the Andy McCabe, who is the biggest fraudster next to James Comey. I think you're going to see these indictments start coming out on the individuals at the top. It's just going to take a few more months, but I remind your viewers, it takes a little bit of time to work these matters.
You know, in the past, I might have seen a clip like this and said, all right, well, George Papadopoulos has been saying this for how long? The amount of people on Twitter who seemingly every single week are tweeting, something big is coming, oh, wait for all of the indictments, and then absolutely nothing happens. You get to the point where you're just saying, all right, I'll believe it when I see it. But Kash Patel has a whole lot more integrity than some of these Twitter users who are clearly just trying to get clout. Kash Patel, from everything I've seen, is a man of complete integrity. And he is making a very bold prediction here that the whole corrupt deep state machine is gonna fall, counting Andy McCabe and James Comey. And you know what? I'm starting to believe him. Perkins Coie and Michael Sussman are just the start, and you know how these Washington swamp creatures work. They'll do whatever they have to save their own behinds. These suit-wearing political Washington operatives won't exactly fare too well in prison now, will they? And so they'll do everything that they possibly can to save themselves, even if it means throwing someone else under a bus. Of course, we all know the leaked text messages from a couple years ago between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, talking about a backup plan, this one specifically probably being the worst. Trump's not ever going to become president, right? With Peter Strzok responding, no, he's not. will stop it. FBI agents literally openly admitting that they will plan to stop Donald Trump from becoming president. That mixed in with everything else, the whole crew being connected, takes this thing from conspiracy theory to conspiracy, shadow coup of a shadow coup against a sitting president. And with the most recent documents that have been released to the public, we now have a much greater understanding of the absolute fraud that was pulled on the American people. Kash Patel called Andy McCabe an absolute fraud. We all remember when Andrew McCabe said that he would not sign the FISA warrant if he knew then what he knew today. Well, based on documents that are now released to the public, and once again Catherine Herridge coming in strong on Twitter, we know that that was a flat-out lie. Andrew McCabe knew that the FISA warrant was full of a word that I cannot use. It was full of junk. Hashtag FISA warrant audit examined accuracy at FBI factual basis or Woods file for FISA applications. IG found non-compliance in record numbers of plus 209 inadequate documentation, plus 209 errors, 179 instances where Wood files were missing in whole or in part, same period as hashtag Durham probe. You guys can take a look at the document for yourself. 209 errors in FISA applications, 209 Woods procedure deficiencies, and 183 missing or incomplete Woods files. When people are talking about the salacious dossier and a phony FISA warrant, it's not conspiracy, it's not an accusation, it's not a theory. They knew it the entire time, yet they continued to push for this FISA warrant, which was being allegedly pushed and paid for by Perkins Coie that was representing the DNC and Hillary Clinton, and the whole band of deep state operatives at the FBI were in on it. All of them. When Lisa Page and Peter Strzok were talking about a backup plan, this is what they were talking about. This is what they were referring to. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were perpetrating a fraud on the American people. It's not a coincidence that Michael Sussman, pushing Jake Sullivan's phony accusations of a Russian server in the Trump campaign to the FBI, and then literally the next day or 2 days later, Hillary Clinton's campaign is pushing it. Catherine Herridge once again. Durham indictment page 2 alleging lawyer Michael Sussman was acting on behalf of 3 clients and not as a quote good citizen when he went to the FBI. No, Durham, multiple media outlets reported on purported secret channel between Trump's organization and Russian bank 1 day before the election. And of course, that's the exact same thing that happened with the FISA warrant, the Steele dossier, etc. Phony information, which is always somehow connected to Hillary Clinton or the DNC. We saw that with Michael Sussman and Perkins Coie. We saw that with Christopher Steele and the Steele dossier. Millions of dollars get funneled into these political propaganda stories, these total fabrications to attack Donald Trump, his campaign, and later on his administration. And then the next day, Hillary Clinton, the rest of the Democrats are pushing these narratives, as well as media outlets who just happen to get the leaks. Like I always say, there can be only so much coincidence until it's no longer a coincidence, but rather a trend. Connections are being made, and all paths don't always lead to Russia. Like Nancy Pelosi says with Donald Trump, all roads lead to Putin. All roads lead to Hillary Clinton and the DNC for pushing this fraud on the American people. The whole machine is as corrupt as you could possibly imagine. All of these deep state operatives scratching each other's back and working with each other to attack any white blood cell like Donald Trump that threatens their power. President Trump sends an official letter to the Pulitzer Committee to revoke 2018 Journalism Award to fake news reporters at the New York Times and the Washington Post. Outlets that of course were connected to this whole Russia conspiracy pushed phony story after phony story after phony story, corrupt actions connected to the DNC and Hillary Clinton, and of course the FBI, and then they won Pulitzer Prizes. I mean, we are talking about some very deep-seated corruption here, folks. The whole lid is being blown off, and John Durham might be going from dud to absolute Chad, where really only one meme can depict what I'm talking about. I'll put it on the screen right over here. And I think corrupt Democrats and corrupt deep state operatives should be very, very weary if what I think's gonna happen happens. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm. I gotta get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
丰厚菠萝皮，散发浓郁淡香，值得一再品尝。统一面包，林格香菠萝。
Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Alright, so I just made a video yesterday talking about black voters and the black voter backlash, how Joe Biden is becoming increasingly unpopular among black voters, the Democrat Party as a whole, frankly. Over the last couple of months, we've been analyzing his polling numbers with specific groups and specifically with black Americans. He's gone from 90% approval down to the 60s, mid 60s, and sometimes low 70s. I mean, we're talking about a 20+% drop in approval rating, and I've been speaking about how this is just the start. Political trends move very slowly. Well, one trend that is breaking that mold are, of course, Latino voters. The absolute shift that we have seen from Latinos over the last couple of years has been nothing but incredible. Democrat political strategy over the last 4 to 5 years has been very focused on one thing: identity politics. Basically, since Donald Trump came down that escalator and announced his run for presidency in 2015, the Democrats have been launching identity politics fear-mongering in relation to Donald Trump's rhetoric, taking it completely out of proportion. But all the lies, all the propaganda, all the fear-mongering has been backfiring like we've never seen before. And really, how I just described it, that's the most important thing to take away from this. Like we have never seen before. Latinos are voting Republican, Latinos are walking away from the Democrat Party like we have never seen before. Counties in Texas and other southern border states are flipping red as the increased Latino population that was in the past viewed as a threat to Republicans in Texas, with Democrats claiming that Texas is going to go blue, is now flipped on its head as Latinos might be one of the strongest factors, one of the strongest catalysts that keeps Texas red and maybe even flips neighboring border states away from the Democrats. This is the Democrats' worst nightmare, and let me update you guys on all the specifics. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so take a look at this headline. Biden's popularity plummets among Texas Hispanics poll. A Quinnipiac poll released on Tuesday showed the heavily Hispanic region of South Texas continued to have less and less confidence in the Biden administration. According to the poll, since June 2021, Biden's approval rating in Texas has gone down sharply from 45% to 32%. At the same time, his disapproval rating surged from 50 to 61. And this is exactly what I've been talking about over the last couple of weeks that we've been covering his approval rating. It might seem like Joe's still doing all right in the 40s, but for a Democrat, that is a death sentence. The only thing keeping Joe Biden even close to the 50% mark are massive states and massive population centers that are Democrat strongholds. In the states that matter in the Electoral College, Joe Biden is not only underwater, Joe Biden is below 40%. That is a doomsday scenario for the Democrats, and so is this trend within Hispanic communities. Biden's approval rating among Hispanics is at 36% in the latest Quinnipiac poll, with a 26% approval of his handling of the border. Democrats have been viewing open border policies as a winning issue with border state Hispanics. And I mean, boy, has that investment failed. 26% approval on his handling of the border from Texas Hispanics. And why is this relevant? Because when Joe Biden made this claim not too long ago,
what you all know, but most people don't know, unlike the African American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things. You go to Florida, you find a very different attitude about immigration in certain places than you do when you're in Arizona.
It was taken as a direct insult to the African American community, specifically because he was making the comparison. But the point that he was making about the Latino community was actually very accurate. Different groups of Latinos have completely different voting patterns. Venezuelans and Cubans, we know, overwhelmingly vote Republican at some of the highest numbers you will see. In some cases, I think we were seeing something like 90+% of Venezuelans in Florida voting Republican. They lived through communism, and if they even get a hint of socialism, then immediately they're voting for the other party. But we have not seen the same thing when it comes to Mexican voters. That is why this is so relevant. Notable differences between states with regards to country of origin include, see Table 1. The Latino population in California, 84%, in Texas, 83%, is overwhelmingly Mexican. If you take a look at this chart right over here, let's look specifically at Texas, 83% from Mexico, 1% from Puerto Rico, 0% Cuban, 0% Dominican Republic, 5% Central America, 2% South America, and 9% other. A supermajority of the Latino community in Texas is Mexican, and now what we are seeing is a trend towards the right. Mexican voters are supposed to be a prized gem for the Democrat establishment. It's exactly what they were banking on to flip Texas red. But the Democrats have been such liars, so incompetent. They've essentially sided with human smugglers and the cartels. They've enabled nothing but human suffering, that they have caused a massive red pill to sweep through the Mexican community, potentially, that might lead to their hopes of turning Texas blue to evaporate in front of their very eyes. They were just about to grab it. They were right there, and then poof, it's gone like that. And that's why what Joe Biden said was absolutely accurate about the Latino community. They break political trends. Where other communities tend to move very slow politically, Latinos, from what we're seeing, shift. We covered this story from a couple months ago from the summer. Texas Republicans celebrate mayoral win in McAllen. McAllen, Texas is a district where the demographic breakdown is 85% Latino. They just voted for a Republican for the first time, I believe, in decades. I don't know about you guys. I mean, 32% approval of Joe Biden's job in the state of Texas is to be expected, but then Texas Latinos basically mirroring the same number at 36%. That ought to be setting off alarm bells for the Democrats. And it's not just Texas, it's the electoral outlook in general. How are the Democrats supposed to pull off a victory in 2022 with below 40% approval rating from independents, 60 to 75% approval rating with African Americans, and with low 40s and in some cases in the 30 percentile from Latino voters? It's just not going to happen. Whether or not those voters end up voting Republican is yet to be seen, but chances are they won't vote Democrat. Chances are Democrats aren't going to make significant gains in the voting demographics that they need to pull off a victory. Trends are now showing that Republicans will. Dems are stunned in Florida as more Republicans continue to register to vote, openly admit their policies don't connect with voters. Facing a historic challenge, Florida Democrats stumble against DeSantis. Fort Lauderdale, Florida. To Kelly Smith, the case against Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is strong. More than 50,000 Floridians have lost their lives to the COVID-19, a confrontational opposition to mandates and jabs that has rubbed even some Republicans the wrong way. But the Pasco County Democratic Party head is skeptical that Florida Democrats can capitalize on it to topple DeSantis next November. But what's really important here, if we just move a little bit forward in the article, for the first time in history, there are nearly as many Republicans registered in Florida as there are Democrats. The state continues to drift to the right even as new census data shows white residents have slipped to 51% of the state's population. Even with Florida becoming more diverse, with more immigrants moving into the state, and with a situation that has white residents almost near a minority, the state of Florida is becoming more right-wing. And for the first time in state history, voter registration between Republicans and Democrats is tied. Democrats have had a voter registration advantage in the state of Florida in the hundreds of thousands, which has become nothing at this point. And pretty soon, if this continues, Miami-Dade might become one of the first metropolitan areas to flip red, which might be the beginning of the end for the Democrat Party. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm. I gotta get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
小心实际异味一起带回家，推荐你去懂煮进洗碗里路。
Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hotline, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know, Democrats have been very good at teaching us one thing: how to be petulant children who do nothing but make enemies and accomplish absolutely nothing. I mean, their tactics are absolutely astounding. They don't get what they want, and so they attack, they harass, they intimidate, they accost, they heckle, whatever you want to call it, and then they expect the people that they abuse, that they try to humiliate and shame, to somehow cave and be on their side. And of course, now we're talking about Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, the two Democrats who are frankly doing the Lord's work and holding Joe Biden accountable. They are refusing to vote on absolutely irresponsible legislation that the Democrats are trying to push through, a totally absurd spending package, and far lefty Democrats are of course responding with,
"How dare you!
They can't handle democracy. They can't handle that other people think differently than them. They can't compromise for even 1 second. And so what do? They harass and intimidate Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, but this time they took it too far. Far lefty activists in the state of Arizona following Kyrsten Sinema into a bathroom stall, yelling and heckling at her in some desperate attempt to make Kyrsten Sinema fold. The dysfunctional Democrats strike once again as things get even more dysfunctional and Democrats continue to shoot themselves in the foot. Let me update you guys on everything that's going on here. Kyrsten Sinema, Joe Manchin, Joe Biden's response, the whole 9 yards. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, you know your parents probably told you when you're growing up, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Democrats clearly never got the memo. They viciously attack their enemies and constantly turn on their own friends. Like I told you guys, how to be petulant children and alienate pretty much everyone. Do nothing but make enemies. It's the only thing the Democrats know. They expect to expand their government representation and successfully enact a revolution in the American system, yet all they ever do is attack and attack and attack and make more and more enemies and lose more and more people. Breaking: Arizona immigrant youths chase down Kyrsten Sinema, box her into a bathroom stall, and then chase her out of the bathroom. Take a look at this.
We need a Build Back Better plan right now.
We knocked on doors. We need solutions. The Build Back Better plan has the solutions that we need. We knocked on doors for you to get you elected, and just how we got you elected, we can get you out of office if you don't support what you promised us.
We need 7 million citizenship for 7 million. We need the Build Back Better plan right now.
My name is Blanca. I was brought to the United States when I was 3 years old. And in 2010, my grandparents both got deported because of SB 1070. And I'm here because I definitely believe that we need a pathway to citizenship. My grandfather passed away 2 weeks ago, and I was not able to go to Mexico and visit him because there is no pathway to citizenship. And if we have the opportunity to pass it right now, then we need to do it, because there's millions of undocumented people just like me who share the same story or even worse things that happen to them because of SB 1070 and because of anti-immigrant legislation. And this is the opportunity to pass it right now, and we need to hold you accountable to what you told us, what you promised us that you were going to pass when we knocked on doors for you. It's not right.
I'm a survivor of human trafficking, and it's because of a lot of work protections that we don't have in the gig economy. I need you to stand by workers, lots of people who are like me, who became homeless
And so, you know, far lefty youngins, bless their souls, they have a real bad combination. You know, being incompetent is one thing. Not knowing what you're talking about, that's one thing. That mixed in with an aggressive feeling of self-righteousness is pretty much a recipe for disaster, and a recipe for what I've mentioned earlier, alienating everyone. But that description of the far lefty Twitter Democrat being ignorant, uneducated on the issues, yet being absolutely self-righteous on those issues is the perfect description for these individuals. I mean, you just listen to what they had to say. They're following Kyrsten Sinema in an aggressive fashion, telling her to vote on the bill. We need the Build Back Better agenda. And then they immediately go to amnesty. She needs to vote yes on it because they want citizenship. And illegal migrants should just be granted the massive reward of being an American citizen after skirting the legal process and jumping ahead of the queue, negatively impacting taxpayers and of course the job market. I mean, first of all, you can tell they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. The Senate parliamentarian blocked the Democrats twice trying to sneak amnesty into the spending package. You can't pass amnesty on a reconciliation vote. But even with that being said, what does amnesty have to do with spending $3.5 trillion during an inflation crisis? I mean, clearly common sense and rational thought isn't their forte. If anything, it's their kryptonite. But it also shows the true intention of this reconciliation package. The reason why far lefty Dems want to just ram it through the system. No questions asked. Definitely don't ask what's actually in the bill, the content. And it also shows just how much they don't care about the American electorate as a whole. They don't care about democracy or the actual will of the voter. They only care about their own socialist dreams and socialist revolution. American voter base be damned. Most independents oppose Biden's massive spending plan. Is President Biden in a no-win situation? This is what we've been covering. But knowing that fact, knowing that most independents, and especially Republicans, and even moderate Democrats, which I'm sure you could put that together, Republicans, moderate Democrats, and independents, aka the majority of the country, don't want to pass this $3.5 trillion bill. Democracy and the will of the voters, the majority of the electorate not wanting something, never stop far-lefty authoritarians from trying to ram it through anyways. You don't know what you want? We will tell you what you need. Typical leftist authoritarianism, marketed as overwhelmingly popular policy. The king of this disinformation campaign proves it for us. Bernie Sanders, the guy who literally can't even win a nomination in his own party and would get absolutely smoked in any general election versus any generic Republican. The guy who consistently says that our ideas are overwhelmingly positive and supported by the American people, despite the facts always saying the opposite, proves that he is in fact an undemocratic hack. Bernie Sanders mocked for claiming 48 senators should overrule 52. Same quote Democrat math that turns $3.5 trillion into $0. Here's the tweet. 2 senators cannot be allowed to defeat what 48 senators and 210 House members want. We must stand with working families of our country. We must combat climate change. We must delay passing the infrastructure bill until we pass a strong reconciliation process. Since a couple senators have such outsized influence, maybe we need a more accurate map of our political geography, the United States of mansion cinema projection. Dan Crenshaw then responds, in other words, how can we let this pesky democracy get in the way of our socialism? But yeah, you guys definitely aren't power-hungry tyrants or anything. Totally right-wing talking point. Here we go, the socialists complaining about democracy again. Actually, it's me and 51 other senators from both sides of the aisle, standing in between you and your radical agenda. I stand for freedom, Bill Hagerty writes, but 52 senators can defeat your big government socialism. The American people won't stand for another power grab from a vocal minority. If Senator Sanders thinks that House and Senate minorities should always win against the majority party, who are we to complain? Bernie taking objection to the filibuster to a whole other level. Once again, far-lefty Democrats are losing the Democratic battle. They can't get a majority. Their bad policies and frankly their mannerisms and their intimidation tactics alienate people away from their causes. And then of course what do? They cry foul play or throw tantrums claiming it's not fair. How can this pesky concept of democracy get in the way? 48 senators and 210 House members should be able to ram through whatever legislation they want. I mean, give me a break. Absolute clowns. Joe Biden jumping on essentially the same bandwagon. Joe Biden blames Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema for dividing Democrats. It's their fault for representing the needs of their constituents, and not the Democrats' fault for pushing through such insane legislation that they can't even get their own party to vote yes on it. Give me a break. Joe Biden also said this, proving he is the biggest clown in American politics. After Kirsten Sinema was chased into the bathroom by activists, he claimed that it was part of the process.
Joe Manchin had people on kayaks show up to his boat to yell at him. Senator Sinema last night was chased into a restroom. Do you think that those tactics are crossing a line?
I don't think they're appropriate tactics, but it happens to everybody. From the only people it doesn't happen to are people who have Secret Service standing around them. It's part of the process, yes.
So harassment of sitting senators from your own political party because you disagree with the way that they vote is just part of the process. Give me a break. These people are absolutely vile, folks, and we've been calling them on this YouTube channel leftist authoritarians for over a year at this point. And if this doesn't make the point, then I don't know what will. That's what I got for you guys, though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work, though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. The Democrats and their most prized possession. And I call it a possession on purpose because honestly, that's the way it is. That's the dynamic. What is their most prized possession? Minority voting groups. Absolutely. It's what gets them over the hump. They don't win Pennsylvania without winning Philadelphia at like 85%. They don't win Georgia without winning Fulton County by like 85%. They don't win various southern border states without the Latino vote, or specifically the Northern Triangle Southern American vote. But folks, slowly but surely it's slipping away. Now, whether or not it's full steam ahead, headed straight to the Republicans, we've yet to see that. I mean, we've seen subtle changes, and for the most part, subtle changes in politics are absolutely huge stories and have lasting impact in the long term, but they don't even necessarily have to vote Republican. The reality is, I think a whole lot of people from minority communities are just not going to vote. The options are vote Republican, which, let's be honest, in a lot of these communities is just not going to happen. And the other option is vote for Democrats, who have betrayed you over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and have delivered absolutely no tangible results whatsoever. And with Joe Biden's failed presidency, and of course all the failed promises, and the policy disaster since 2019 to present, I am very comfortable making the prediction that I think voter enthusiasm and voter participation in minority communities is going to drop in the next 2 election cycles. And I want to show you guys exactly why I think that is. We got a lot to get into, but before we do, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so the first thing we have to talk about is the absolute failure, the backfire that the whole anti-police and defund the police narrative has created. Murderapolis, again. Homicide statistics alone don't convey the full costs of rising crime in Minnesota's largest city. This past summer, a judge in Hennepin County, Minnesota, ruled in favor of the Minneapolis 8, a group of minority Minneapolis residents who sued the city last fall for violating its charter by failing to maintain a large enough police force. The ruling, which directed the city to hire more officers, sparked a glimmer of hope among residents that they would be spared from the worst policy impulses of police abolitionist activists and politicians. The ruling, however, doesn't take effect until 2022, when the city will begin the process of hiring and training more officers, and current conditions in Minneapolis are already dire. According to MPD's official homicide statistics, last year's 83 homicides approached the previous record of 97 set in 1995, when the city earned the nickname Murderapolis, with a homicide rate that surpassed New York City's. Homicides are now on pace to approach, if not surpass, 1995's record. Historically crime-ridden parts of the city are plagued with nightly street violence, endangering those most disenfranchised and also affecting the quality of life in neighborhoods once considered safe havens. There are rising reports of children being caught up in rampant street violence. On September 8th, a 12-year-old was shot in what police described as a neighborhood dispute that turned violent in North Minneapolis. The victims of this summer's endemic violence, including 2 3-year-olds hit by gunfire in different locations in the span of 1 week. And so, I find it kind of interesting. I think maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, we covered a ruling from a judge that shot down Ilhan Omar's proposal to further defund and abolish the police. She claimed specifically in that video, which we completely condemned and called out, that the judge had acted against the interest and against the will of Minneapolis' most disenfranchised. Well, let's just say we now have the reality. The Minneapolis 8 sued the city to hire more police officers. Black residents of Minneapolis say they need more cops, not fewer. As voters head to the polls to decide the fate of the city's police department, most black residents want more police, who will of course value black lives. That sentiment is reflected in a recent survey which found that the majority of black voters in Minneapolis oppose reducing the size of the police department. They're concerned that cutting the size of the police force would further tighten the grip that violent crime and drug problems have on the streets. But the numbers are absolutely staggering. Minnesota poll results: Minneapolis Policing and Public Safety Charter Amendment. Do you think Minneapolis should or should not reduce the size of its police force? Minneapolis voters, 55% said should not. And take a look at this disparity right over here. 33% of white voters believe that the police force should be slashed, and 51% said should not. Black voters, however, near unanimously do not want the police force slashed. Only 14% of black respondents believe that the police force should be reduced, with 75% of black voters surveyed believe that the police force should not be cut. Whose priority is it to defund the police? Is it the latte Democrat liberal who claim to be allies doing the right thing for the black community, while clearly, as we can see here by the statistics, statistics doing the exact opposite of what the black community wants. Remember, when it comes to liberal doctrine in relation to minority voters, I hate to say this, but there's a whole lot of white-splaining on the liberal side. You know, from our perspective, they say stuff like white-splaining, etc., mansplaining, and from our, let's use one of their words again, lived experience, we react with what are these Looney Tune concepts they're talking about. But in their world, honestly, it seems as though it does in fact truly exist. White people telling black people what they need and what they should want and who they should vote for, and completely ignoring the actual needs and wants of these communities. Like I always say, the true racists, the true bigoted ones, the true condescending, patronizing, prejudiced individuals exist on the left more than anywhere else. The constant manipulating and taking advantage of minority suffering. But of course, worst of all is the fear-mongering. It's always white latte liberals claiming how evil the police officers are. Your life is at risk, they yell. Your life is at risk. The statistics don't necessarily bear that out. Over the last 4 years of Donald Trump's presidency, Donald Trump's coming for you. It's Donald Trump's America. Careful. Don't even walk the streets. Hate crimes are up like we've never seen before. Lo and behold, reality. The long list of bogus, quote, hate crimes in the Trump era is long. This was dated February 21st, 2019, so it's missing 2 years of these bogus crimes. And just take a look at what the New York Post was able to quantify here. That's only what they were able to find in only 2016 through 2019. Let's just say there have been a lot since then. In fact, just this week there was 2. Hate hoax, white KKK member making racially motivated threats to burn down homes and end neighbors turns out to be a black woman, police say. A couple days prior, police arrest black university employee for graffiti featuring a word you should not say and of course a symbol that you should not ever write on school building. They're endless, one after another after another after another. You guys have seen this piece that I've covered many times. Hate crime hoaxes are more common than you think. A political scientist found that fewer than 1 in 3 of 346 such allegations were genuine. Less than 1/3 are genuine. Based on statistics and analysis, less than 1/3 are genuine. But the Democrats continuously push this idea of fear and this terrible racist nation, racist police officers, and use it as a political tool to manipulate voter blocks to vote for them. Well, I think people are starting to wake up. I think the Democrats are starting to lose people. Now, I don't want to go too much into this topic because, of course, welcome to this platform. But with Joe Biden's tyrant jab mandate, I don't necessarily think that that's going to bode very well with the African American community either. What about illegal migrants? We know as well, black voters are not exactly thrilled with illegal migration, but now border officials are expecting 400,000 illegals to storm across the border in October alone. DHS fears up to 400,000 migrants, or double the 21-year record set in July, could cross the border in October when coup restrictions that Trump used to stop the surge from Mexico end, report claims. And so, given all of this, and given the fact that Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for me,
And you ain't black.
given everything the Democrats promised and the complete lack of results, I think their greatest political asset will very quickly become their greatest political enemy, just like what we saw in Florida. They had Latino votes in the bag, but slowly and surely as the Democrats degrade into a socialist, authoritarian, unhinged party, Latinos and of course Florida in general has become further and further out of grasp of them. It's becoming a Republican stronghold, and I wouldn't be surprised if over the next couple elections we see the exact same thing happening with black voters in some of the most important cities and counties that Democrats need to win the Electoral College. Minneapolis might be next on the chopping block. If they recede in Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Detroit, Philadelphia, Atlanta, etc., the Democrats are going to be in serious, serious trouble. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. I gotta get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know what's real interesting about Joe Biden's administration? The constant fluctuations, the changing. How one week Joe Biden is the center of attention, the next it's Kamala, then it's Jen Psaki, then Jake Sullivan, and it's just disaster after disaster falling on someone's lap. A couple months ago, Kamala Harris was the least popular vice president in American history, or modern history rather, for the first 6 months of any administration. And of course what people were talking about back then was how how is Kamala going to take over? If Joe's to get 25th, or if Joe's to resign, or anything else happens, how is Kamala Harris going to take over at all? And then lo and behold, a couple months later, the whole thing flipped. Joe Biden's poll numbers are now much worse than Kamala Harris, and Kamala Harris seems like a beacon of light for the Democrats. All of a sudden, the least popular candidate you could run, who's still, by the way, less popular against Donald Trump in head-to-head matchups, all of a sudden she seems to be the Democrats' saving grace, literally. And it goes back to that same thing. There are a lot of talented people, there's a lot of charismatic people in the world, but for some reason, they never seem to get involved in politics now, do they? I mean, just think about it. The top two Democrats at the head of the ticket are this guy,
True international effort to pressure.
and this girl. And so let's talk a little bit about that, how Joe Biden is increasingly less and less popular, how the Democrats are now trying to lean on Kamala Harris and create a bright Democrat future with phony Kamala Harris. And so I guess the overarching theme of this video is the closer we get to election season, it just seems like the Democrats are more and more doomed, more destined for absolute failure each and every single day. We got some stuff to get into, but before we do, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so the question has always been who will be his successor. Majority believe Biden's lying about Afghanistan and want him to resign. Joe Biden has an expiry date. He can only keep going for so long, it is just not sustainable. And so logically, the next outcome and what Democrats are now banking on, Democrats are hoping Kamala Harris can help them get out the vote in 2022 midterms. Democrats see Kamala Harris as a major player in the midterms. Democrats expect Vice President Harris to be a major player. The Hill reports that Democrats expect Vice President Harris to be a major player in revving up the party's liberal base ahead of the next year's midterms. Harris's allies believe that she will play a significant role both by fundraising and participating in campaign rallies. Democrats see Kamala Harris as uniquely positioned to drive up turnout among young people and women, who they believe will be critical to Democrats retaining their majorities in Congress. Historical trends suggest that Republicans should have an edge in the midterm elections, and Democrats say a strong turnout will be key for the party to keep power. Quote, "She is very popular with the base. She is particularly strong with women and young people. Turnout for young people is going to be critical for the next midterms, and it is uncertain," said Selena Lake, a Democrat pollster who advised President Biden's campaign. Between turnout and swing independent women, I would think she would be quite aggressive because of her own appeal and popularity, which is absolutely hilarious. And literally not even a day later, a counter article on Town Hall pops up. They're screwed. Democrats have chosen their secret weapon for the midterm. Seriously? This is who Democrats think can be their secret weapon for the 2022 midterms? Is the bench really that thin? Also, why isn't Joe Biden at the top of the list? Doesn't the president have coattails? Nope, not right now. And probably not for the foreseeable future. Inflation is spiking, economic growth is slowing, job creation is evaporating, and we're a mess abroad. Biden's trust in handling the coup is also dipping. Afghanistan has collapsed and Joe left Americans stranded. There's not much this administration can tout. The coup jab isn't one of them. Biden inherited the jab from Donald Trump. It's why he needs these spending bills to pass, which will add to the deficit and make the inflation crisis worse, but it needs something. So with Joe in limbo, Democrats think Kamala Harris could be their golden ticket. And trust me, they are going full on with this one. US Vice President Kamala Harris hires 2 advisors as her portfolio grows. I mean, most likely they saw this Gallup poll, which we covered a couple weeks ago. Biden's approval rating hits new low of 43%. Kamala Harris is 49%. And they thought to themselves, oh my God, Kamala Harris, she's our answer. She's the golden ticket. Then of course reality sets in. You might have had one good Gallup poll, but if you look at Kamala Harris's aggregate favorability ratings, well, let's just say I wouldn't get too excited yet, Democrats. Kamala Harris sitting at a 40% favorability rating, with a little bit over a month ago, Kamala Harris polling below 40%. I mean, the choice is between dumb and dumber, the choice is between crappy and crappier. Joe Biden's numbers hovering around 45%. And so you have the least popular Democrat president in modern history with the least popular vice president in modern history, regardless of party. You got them both trying to mobilize votes in 2022. And now you got to take the bad news bears and go to the tournament in 2022 and expect not to finish last place? I don't know about that one, but clearly the Democrats have made their decision. That decision, of course, is to put Joe Biden back in the basement and try to bring out the big guns in Kamala Harris, try to reform her image and somehow make this palatable. Joe Biden offers to take questions from members of the Democrat caucus, but his aides jump in and stop him. Back in the basement you go, Joe. Can't have Uncle Joe opening his mouth during the 2022 midterms. The Democrats are under serious pressure. They need real answers. They need a serious candidate who's going to be able to take the tough questions in relation to all of the crisis that we've seen over the couple of months. And clearly, Joe Biden's not up to task. When questioned over the last couple of months, take a look at how he described it.
The problem is, you know, one of the reasons why people said, well, I heard on television, it wasn't totally legit, why wasn't Biden going around the country selling this before? Well, for a few little things, like we had hurricanes and floods, and we had little things like we had, anyway, a lot was going on.
Oh, you know, Border Patrol is only estimating nearly 400,000 illegal migrants crossing the southern border in October. Endless human suffering, human trafficking, women being taken advantage of. Afghanistan has completely fallen to the Taliban. Joe Biden committed a war crime. 13 U.S. service members have fallen. Now new potential national security risks on the homeland from unvetted Afghans, and of course, the Taliban have completely taken over Afghanistan, and it will clearly make it a hub of terrorism once again. Gas is up, I believe, 40% just this year, on inflation crisis, government spending out of control, slower jobs, an absolutely horrid economic recovery. All of that, just little things, folks. Come on, man. Those are just little things. Look at the big picture, man. And somehow, despite all of that, and despite the fact that people know it, they feel it, they've seen it, it's not some imaginary boogeyman like the potential of a Donald Trump presidency around the corner. Who knows what he's going to do during his second term like it ran with in 2020. It's not a ghost. It's no longer a ghost. It's no longer a mystery. The American people have seen what this man and his administration are about. They've seen the disaster. They see the prices at the pump. They see the hiring signs at every single establishment, crumbling small business, the spike in crime, the border, Afghanistan. They've seen it all with their own eyes. And if you think that parading Kamala Harris out on that stage in order to mobilize young socialist voters that the Democrat establishment has thrown under a bus maybe 6 or 7 times in the last 6 or 7 months, at least once a month, and I'd say that's a conservative estimate, well, that to me seems like a winning strategy for the Republicans, I'll tell you that much. The demise of the Democrat Party continues. They have everything, folks. They have the media, social media, Hollywood, culture. They have everything going for them to consistently win elections, yet they somehow seem to screw it all up each and every single time. From Hillary Clinton to the 2018 midterms, at least from the Senate perspective, to 2020 barely getting Joe Biden across the line, and even that, I mean, let's not go there, to now most likely a massive blowout victory in 2022. They are so absolutely incompetent and so bad at political strategy. They are so absolutely out of their minds when it comes to political strategy and just being relatable and choosing candidates, that even with the deck stacked in their favor, they still somehow manage to consistently lose. Let's hope this time they don't just lose, but they get absolutely BTFO'd. That's what I got for you guys. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm. I gotta get back to work though. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hotline, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Remember what I was just saying the other week, how this F Joe Biden thing has become a craze? How it's natural, not forced? How unlike half of these anti-Trump catchphrases and auditory symbols of protest, it was more of a natural phenomenon that I think is going to continue to grow. Well, it has become so prevalent, so big, that it is now everywhere. Like I keep saying, Democrats, and especially Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, cannot show their faces anywhere. They cannot show their faces in public without being booed and heckled to oblivion. So much for the most popular president and vice president dynamic duo in American history. Well, it just happened once again at a NASCAR event in Talladega, Alabama, where Brandon Brown wins historically, is interviewed, and of course the crowd right behind Brandon starts chanting F Joe Biden, and wait till you get a kick of this. We got a lot to get into, folks, as the most popular president in American history very quickly seems to become the least popular president in American history who cannot show his face anywhere. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so we got this right over here from Jewish Deplorable. NBC reporter attempts desperate damage control as crowd chants F Joe Biden.
To all of our partners Oh my God, it's such an unbelievable moment.
Brandon, you also told me, I can hear the chants from the crowd. Let's go, Brandon. Brandon, you told me you were going to kind of hang back those first stages and just watch and learn what.
And so he's not exactly wrong with his analysis that the NBC reporter attempted very desperate damage control. If you guys missed it, then just take a listen to this.
I can hear the chants from the crowd. Let's go, Brandon.
Very clearly, the crowd was saying F Joe Biden, but she tried to spin it as let's go, Brandon. I don't know about that one, but it just goes to show the lengths these networks will go to protect Joe Biden. Pretty soon, the fact checkers are probably going to sweep in too, claiming the crowd was chanting go vote Biden as Joe Biden's popularity starts to swing up. But the reality is, this is something I think we've never seen before. Has there ever been a president that has been this despised? I mean, of course, lefties hated Donald Trump, but for the most part, it was a minority of the Democrat electorate that was frankly completely out of their minds watching way too much Rachel Maddow, spending way too much time on Twitter, and these lefties tried to create viral phenomenons, F Donald Trump, etc., writing songs and all this stuff, but it never really materialized the way that they wanted it to. This whole F Joe Biden thing is bigger than anything I've ever seen. The new American catchphrase, F Joe Biden chants, break out at Kid Rock's Nashville bar. Baseball games, football games, concerts, NASCAR events. We probably have some UFC events right around the corner where that's going to happen as well. It's a phenomenon that is completely taking over. And I mean, considering Joe Biden's popularity right now, especially when it comes to the radical left, I wouldn't be surprised if Black Lives Matter started chanting F Joe Biden at their rallies. And so, of course, with Joe Biden in the dumps, what do you think the Biden White House is doing? Being as disingenuous as ever. Pathetic. White House dubs "We Love Joe" chant in video of congressional ballgame appearance to make Joe seem popular. In an apparent effort to counter the nationwide trend of F Joe Biden chants at sporting events around the nation, the White House released a video Sunday morning of Joe Biden's visit to the congressional baseball game in Washington, D.C. last Wednesday that opens with overdubbed, girlish voices chanting "We Love Joe" as Biden entered Nationals Park. So before we play that clip, let's get a little bit of a reminder, a little refresher, a flashback of what really happened when Joe Biden entered Nationals Park.
Joe, you suck!
I mean, look, there's boos and there's cheers, and a stadium for the most part is democratic. You're talking about tens of thousands of people in attendance. If there are more cheers than boos, you're going to be able to tell. All I could hear were boos, very clearly overtaking the cheers. Here is how the Joe Biden administration is framing this thing on their newest Joe Biden campaign ad. We love Joe. We love Joe. I'm gonna go ahead and put a fact check false on that one real quick. The disingenuous Democrats strike again, and I question myself, where's the Twitter fact check? If Donald Trump had done that, it would be labeled manipulative media. It would have a tag on it. It would be removed. Oh, the horror of the fake news. Fact checkers from coast to coast would be outraged over the quote manipulated media. Journalists and talking heads would be mentioning it. Joe Biden manipulates media, literally, and of course nobody seems to care. I mean, this is the type of stuff that nobody should care about, but if it was Donald Trump, trust me, it would be newsworthy. I don't care about the manipulated media. I don't care about the fact that they're disingenuous, they're liars, they'll edit things to make themselves look good. That is the exact type of stuff, the exact play you expect from the disingenuous Democrats. What I do care about and what I do like is that this is continued proof, confirmation, that the Democrats are in total panic mode. Joe Biden is sinking to the bottom of the sea, and they're trying to fish him up. Although it seems as though nowadays, there's not really much to fish. ABC News puts it into perspective after the disastrous week for Joe Biden.
This morning, the White House putting a brave face on what is a tough day for the Biden agenda and the Biden presidency. Aides insisting that this is just one step in what is always the long, difficult process of passing major legislation. Democracy is messy, they keep telling us. But last night in the final final scramble to get anything passed on the Hill. It seemed more than messy here. No one really seemed to have a real grasp of what was going on. Plans changed back and forth on whether the president would make a public statement. He hasn't spoken publicly since Monday, and the mood here veered from giddy hopes to exhaustion and resignation. There's just no papering over how tough a blow this is to President Biden. He's the leader of his party. Democrats set this deadline, and he failed to unite the party to get it done.
It's a big blow to the Biden administration, and did you catch that one thing in that news report? Joe Biden hasn't spoken publicly since Monday. I mean, what an absolute clown. And of course, we know exactly why. It's totally calculated. With all the pressure on Joe these days, the guy's an absolute loose cannon. Watch. After avoiding questions for 4 days, Joe Biden snaps at reporter who asked, why is it so challenging to unite the party?
Why has it been so challenging to unite the party? Why is the party united? Why is the party united?
Again, more confirmation that the Democrats are in total panic mode. Desperation is kicking in, and Joe just can't be the front man. The guy snaps, or worst of all, the reason why we've covered reporting in the past of Biden aides being on the edge of their seat and absolutely nervous any single time Joe Biden addresses the press is the fear of this happening.
I was a senator a long time. I know how legislation gets done.
I mean, the guy was mid-sentence and his brain just stopped. It's one thing to lose your thought, or to be like Justin Trudeau saying every 2 seconds.
Certainly, I think we're all aware that a prime minister showing up in Fort McMurray when firefighters are busy trying to contain a massive raging wildfire is not a particularly helpful thing. The best thing I can do right now is
It's another to be mid-sentence 5 seconds ago knowing exactly what you were trying to say, and then your brain just goes into the clouds and you're gone. Just like that, Sleepy Joe was there and then Sleepy Joe was gone. Absolute 404 error. Windows blue screen. The car's been stalled. And this is the guy that's gonna deliver results for the American people. This is the guy that literally 2 days ago Jen Psaki described as incredibly hardworking. I mean, what a work ethic. Even Joe Biden claiming that he's been working around the clock to pass his agenda in new video. President Joe Biden at POTUS tweets, "I've been working around the clock to pass my Build Back Better agenda and the bipartisan infrastructure deal. It's the platform I was elected on and I intend to deliver it for the American people." In reality, Joe Biden worked an average of 3 hours a day all week according to his official calendar. Monday 3.5 hours, Tuesday 3 hours, Wednesday 4.5 hours, Thursday 3, Friday 6, Saturday 1, and Sunday 0 hours. A total of 21 hours for the week, or 3 hours per day. Joe Biden is currently resting in Delaware. They don't call him Sleepy Joe for no reason. They don't call him Basement Joe for no reason. And they don't call him a politician for no reason. The guy hasn't worked a day in his entire life. Career politicians like Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders don't even know what the word hard work means. The reality is Joe Biden's doing absolutely nothing, but being ushered around like an old grandpa in a nursing home, being told not to speak, stay away from the cameras, Joe, stay away from the microphone. Pretty soon the guy's gonna be wearing a helmet so the guy doesn't hurt himself with his very restless 21-hour work week. I mean, that's a real hard workload for old sleepy Grandpa Joe. I don't know about you guys, but I certainly miss the Orange Man who was sleeping 5 hours a day, tirelessly working, being president, campaigning, doing rallies, fundraising, making foreign policy and foreign trade deals, delegating national security tasks, etc. I mean, talk about a downgrade. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe. I gotta get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hotline, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. What are Democrats to do? What are Democrats gonna do to turn this whole thing around? Desperation is starting to kick in as, of course, we are still covering the failed spending package, as they're titling it, Biden's agenda. Their, quote, bipartisan plans for America that have total support from the American populace. The double package plan that's gonna turn this whole ship around and make Joe Biden the most popular president in American history. Well, let's just say that it's a whole lot more complicated than that. Joe Biden has had some pretty bad crises over the last couple of months. Well, what if I told you that what was viewed as the solace, the light at the end of the tunnel, the one thing that was going to turn the whole thing around, might actually be the final nail in the coffin for Joe Biden and Democrats in the near future, as this whole thing continues to get even more messy as each day ticks by. We have dedicated countless videos to this topic, I mean probably over 10, 15 at this point over the last 2-3 months, but it just continues to unravel the deceit, the manipulation, the lies. They are twisting themselves in knots trying to get something passed, but no matter what they do at this point, one party is going to be disappointed. And I'm really starting to be convinced that there are just no good outs for the current president. There are 3 different options for Joe Biden at this point: disaster or utter disaster. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. There's not really much going on in the news cycle outside of the spending package and the dysfunction within the Democrat ranks. So of course we're going to continue to focus our coverage on the spending package and Democrat dysfunction. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned from the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so let's first set the stage. What does the Joe Biden administration do when it has its back up against a wall? We have seen this administration tackle crisis. We know their modus operandi. We know how they act. What is it? If anything goes astray, blame the orange man or blame Republicans. Jen Psaki blames Republicans after Pelosi was forced to delay vote on $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill due to Democrat infighting.
Aren't progressives squarely to blame for the furlough that's happening right now?
Well, to be clear, I mean, every member of Congress is a free citizen who could vote to support this infrastructure bill, including Republicans. They could come forward and support it, as 19 Republicans in the Senate did not. Instead, they've chosen to be influenced by whether it's pharmaceutical companies or other special interests, or just to be strong-armed by their leadership, not to support legislation that many, including members of the Problem Solvers Caucus, suggested they may. So it just requires a majority to support legislation in Congress, and we haven't seen any real courage from the Republican side in the House.
And so that's how you know the Democrats are full of it. They have been saying for months it's the bipartisan bill of the century. Bipartisan this, bipartisan that. Clearly not so bipartisan after all. It's Republicans' fault that Democrats cannot get their own party together to vote on basic legislation. It's the Republicans. Well, I'd say reality disagrees with that. Report Kyrsten Sinema prepared to, quote, walk away from the Biden agenda. Mitt Romney cries extreme Democrats are holding the so-called bipartisan infrastructure bill, quote, hostage. It's once again political messaging. The Democrats have one major issue right now. They look dysfunctional. They look like they cannot govern, they cannot pass legislation for the American people. That's a flat-out fact. And so what do? They try to shift the messaging towards Republicans. Blame them, don't blame us. But we have covered all of the polling data. If Democrats with a majority in the House and a majority in the Senate are unable to pass basic legislation and even a reconciliation spending bill, the American people will in fact blame Democrats. That will fall on them. And so they're trying to run away from that as fast as possible, launching pressure campaigns and attack ads on Kyrsten Sinema and Senator Joe Manchin. And now with their new tactic, fear-mongering about domestic extremism, which is now somehow related to spending. Joe Biden to the Democrats, vote for trillions in spending or the Capitol rioters win. Vote for our absolutely insane spending package or the evil domestic terrorist Trump supporters win. Talk about a complete act of desperation, and talk about being completely unhinged, but more specifically, unhinged from reality. If the nearly $5 trillion double spending package is passed, is it truly the domestic terrorist insurrectionists that win, or is it the American people that lose in American moderates? Once again, logic and common sense prevails. Americans back government spending cuts to control inflation. Americans believe inflation is here to stay, and that the most preferred method of containing inflation is to reduce government spending. Oh wow, who would have thought that as the cost of living has spiked through the roof during an inflation crisis, Americans would rather government slow down instead of speed up and put the pedal to the metal, headed straight for a brick wall. It seems as though Democrat messaging is once again falling short. Most think that inflation is a long-term problem, 13% not sure, 19% a short-term problem that will soon disappear, and 68% a long long-term problem that will be with us for a while. Clearly, 19% of people polled are living in a total fairy tale land, but at least, once again, 68% of people have a basic common sense understanding of basic fiscal responsibility. And now even the Biden administration admits it. They claim the southern border surge was seasonal and that inflation was just transitory, not here to stay. And now all of a sudden, Biden economist admits US could experience elevated inflation through mid-2022. If they're now admitting mid-2022, you could probably conservatively estimate mid-2024 at least. And who other than a Democrat would think that during a hyperinflation crisis expected to linger for multiple years, that it would be a good idea to pass a $5 trillion deal, enable unemployment, enable benefits, increase taxes, and print more money? Clearly, only 19% of Democrats. I mean, for Pete's sakes, even liberal Bill Maher can admit the obvious. Bill Maher defends Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, says they have their thumb on the average voter. Maybe these two might have their thumb more on the pulse of the average Democrat in the country. And here is where this is a total loss for the Democrat Party going forward, no matter what the outcome. The only likely scenario, Joe Biden is quoted as saying very clearly, we've got to work on both spending bills together. He said that he needs both bills, and that is an absolute fact. Both bills might eventually pass, but only after a total bloodbath in the Senate and in the House. Even if Joe Biden gets his miraculous win, it's still not gonna be a win. Nancy Pelosi offers the far left a $2.1 trillion reconciliation package. Democrat Representative Dean, Biden told us the size of the reconciliation bill is not going to be the $3.5 trillion number. They've been pandering to the far left for months. For what reason? Just to get them to cave and vote on the $1.2 trillion deal so they can then pull a fast one on him and cut the $3.5 trillion spending package instantaneously. Another bait and switch, once again, Joe Biden pandering to progressives and then immediately planning on throwing them under a bus. How is that gonna work? Moderate Democrats and independents are already starting to move away from the Democrat Party, and especially the new agenda. The economic crisis, the southern border crisis, Afghanistan, Joe Biden's clearly crumbling mental capacity. And then on top of that, progressives being used and abused multiple election seasons in a row and are finally putting their foot down, saying enough is enough and standing in the way of Joe Biden's agenda. What I just described to you is what's going on. Even if they get the bill passed at a $2 trillion price tag, does the current circumstance seem to you like a winning recipe for the 2022 midterms? I am certainly not seeing it, not in the least. No matter what Joe Biden does, it's a massive loss somewhere. Some key electoral group is going to be unhappy. Obviously, the Democrats want to pander to moderate Democrats, who are going to win them swing districts. Progressives only run in total Democrat strongholds where Republicans don't even exist. So progressives are going to get thrown under a bus. Joe Biden's going to appeal to the moderates, but it all just seems too little, too late, as trust and faith in Joe Biden and the Democrat agenda continues to erode, with good reason. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hotline, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Well, I've said it before and I will say it again, it's got a real good ring to it. The United States of Texas, or the United States of Florida, whatever you want to call it. It started off as a meme that I would just post on my Twitter account, people would like it and have a good laugh. But the divide, the fracturing between both political sides has reached maybe beyond a point of redemption. Now, I generally like to stay relatively optimistic, but I really don't know anymore. How can the two current political sides mesh together? It started off as political differences, but it's become hate. It's become violent. It's become vitriol. It's become toxic, and I don't know how you step back from that. How do you fix it? How do you fix and mend the unfixable or the unmendable? Some diseases just don't have cures. And what if the cure is secession? What if the cure is just divorce, splitting up? You go your way, we go our way. Go your own ways, make your own path. Let the socialists create the United States of Venezuela, and let the freedom-minded, open market conservatives create their own little world. Well, it started off as a meme, and it seems as though it's becoming reality, as Texans are growing more and more fond of secession. Texas House members have been pushing petitions and pushing legislation, a couple months ago pushing towards a vote on whether or not to secede. And now we have polling data idea that it seems as though both sides of the political aisle are really opening up to the idea of seceding. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on here. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, take a look at this headline right over here. It says it all. More than half of Trump voters would like to secede from the Union, while most Americans believe we're no longer a democracy. Mediaite reported on the poll from Virginia. Significant numbers of both Trump and Biden voters show a willingness to consider violating democratic tendencies and norms if needed to serve their priorities. Roughly 2 in 10 Trump and Biden voters strongly agree it would be better if a president could take needed actions without being constrained by Congress or courts. And roughly 4 in 10, 41% of Biden, and half, 52% of Trump voters, at least somewhat agree that it is time to split the country, favoring blue/red states seceding from the Union. On one hand, roughly 80% of Trump and Biden voters view democracy as preferable to any non-democratic kind of government. And while these numbers are, of course, not unanimous to say the least on both sides, what's startling is just the increase. Every single year, every single month, it gets worse and worse and worse. The numbers climb and climb and climb as more people are realizing that the current political divide is going to be very hard to heal. And it has been my prediction for months that this is the direction of the current political dynamic. If you think about it, let's focus specifically on the 2020 election. Think about that dynamic. You had tens of millions of Americans who completely lost faith and lost trust in the democratic process. Then you had the other side of the country, as well as the media, social media companies, telling them you're crazy, ostracizing them from society, and having no willingness whatsoever to look into the claims and look into the issue. How is that possibly going to make things better? Imagine being on the side that's losing faith and the other side is saying, well, too bad, tough luck, you're a crazy nut job and into the asylum you go. You think that's just gonna magically make things better? Or is that going to further exacerbate the issue, cause further division, further distrust, and an overall negativity that's going to continue to fester? I mean, Dirk doesn't take a PhD to figure out that one. Then on the other hand, you have Democrats who have wildly unpopular ideas, who can never seem to put together a strong coalition in government, are struggling to win a strong majority, cannot implement their wacko ideas since they're deeply unpopular and even Democrats, moderate Democrats, block them, and then they're screeching that democracy doesn't work when it's clearly working and want to subvert democracy in order to implement their crazy destructive socialist ideals. You have a group of people who have lost faith in democracy and who just want assurances of democratic integrity. The other side essentially gives them the middle finger and says absolutely not. And then you have another side that seems hell-bent on subverting democracy and destroying democracy, destroying the separations of power, stacking the Supreme Court, abolishing the Electoral College, stacking the Senate with more Democratic seats. And then people ponder why conservatives want to just get out of Dodge. I mean, I really don't blame you. And that doesn't even begin as a summation to the issues that people have when it comes to Democrat leadership. Senator Tom Cotton, Democrats' criminal leniency policies sparked an undeniable crime wave. When you live under Democrat reign, you live in a less safe environment for you and your kids. De Blasio's New York City, business down 40 to 60% due to COOF mandates. When you live under Democrat reign, you live under draconian rule and an ever-expanding government power that is affecting business and affecting your life and your ability to feed your kids. We saw during the early days of the COOF pandemic in New York City, where over 50% of black-owned business went under or was near bankruptcy. Democrat cities have yet to recover, many of them having well over a 7% unemployment rate, while Florida has been under 5% over the last couple of months. And then you live with the disgusting lies from the current administration. Disgusting liar Jen Psaki blames Trump for Joe Biden's coup failures and lack of leadership.
Title 42, tariffs on China. I mean, there's
Title 42 is a public health requirement, because we're in the middle of a pandemic, which, by the way, we would have made progress on had the former president actually addressed the pandemic and not suggested people inject bleach. So I think we're in a bit of a different place. I'm happy to discuss more examples. I think people be pretty hard pressed to argue that the president has taken any aspect of the former president's playbook and used it as a model of his own. Go ahead.
Somehow it's all Donald Trump's fault. When you live under Democrat reign, you live with all the red tape and the anti-business mentality, and even mixed in with that, you live with the constant assault on constitutional rights, whether it's free speech or the Second Amendment. There's a reason why we see headlines like this. Leading gun manufacturer Smith & Wesson is moving headquarters from Massachusetts to Tennessee. You live with attacks on your freedoms and your rights. Freedom to live, freedom to partake in society, freedom to earn a living, freedom of speech, the right to bear arms and protect yourself and your family. And then on top of of all of that, it has trickle-down effects where business leaves. Is it no surprise that more manufacturers, more tech companies, more massive corporations are leaving California and Portland, Washington, Chicago, Massachusetts, and they all near unanimously seem to be heading towards red states with less red tape, with lower taxes and higher freedom index, where people can partake in society and consume products and pay for services, go to restaurants, go to ball games, live their lives without permission from the government or without unbearable restrictions that make the business not profitable. People say it's temporary. Democrats are saving lives while Republicans seem careless or have no compassion when it comes to the loss of life. No, that has nothing to do with it. It's an equation. It's called a balancing. Loss of life is never good. Everyone can agree with that. It's about balancing protection of those lives with protection of basic human rights and constitutional rights. You say it's temporary emergency orders, temporary powers to government. But when, I ask you, when in the history of human nature has government taken power temporarily and then given it back? When government takes, it keeps. And if you haven't paid attention to that yet, then your eyes are closed and your ears are blocked. If you think for half a second, Democrat governors, leaders, mayors, etc. plan on giving back the powers that they have taken, you are out of your damn mind. You are never going back to normal. They've told you on countless occasions. And then people wonder, while there's net positive migration to the great state of Texas and Florida, I don't know, it's a mystery to me. Give me a break. Wake up and smell the coffee. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm. I gotta get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Here we are again, going back to our roots.